Welcome back to Creating Your Life, Money and Wealth. This is episode 24. What is wealth really? So we're going to continue on from our last episode and start defining terms in a new way. And as I mentioned before, when people want to manipulate you, pick your pockets, what con artists do in one form or another, they change the language. So by getting down to what things really are, getting down to the fine distinctions, we're going to be able to illuminate economics in a new way for you so that you can protect yourself. Hi, I'm Marc-Andre Alexander, and we're back for more. And the first question to come to mind is, what is wealth? One way of thinking about it is this. If governments could create wealth, they would have no need for taxes. Governments, you would think that governments create wealth, that in some way they can do what individuals don't do, what companies can do. Governments can print up money, but they can't create wealth. And this is your first clue that money and wealth are different things. Why is it that the government does not simply print up $1 million for every man, woman, and child? Why doesn't the government just make us millionaires? Well, if this kind of thing has been tried in the past, and governments who have tried this have essentially initiated economic disaster. And as we go through the series, you're going to understand why it is that government just can't create wealth, create money in such a way, and distribute it to everybody successfully. That when government tries even a little bit at a time, it results in economic distortion and it causes problems. This isn't always apparent. Sometimes it works in very indirect ways. So as a consequence, it's hard for people to identify what's actually going on. It's easier to blame other people for it rather than the real root cause, which can be government. So let's talk about wealth. And first I want to kind of outline something that will be used throughout most of these broadcasts. I'm going to use the metaphor of 3 different islands: Gold Island, Iron Island, and Silver Island. Gold Island is an island, say, of 100 people. It's an ideal world where everybody is honest, everybody is virtuous, everybody has values. It's the ideal place for things to happen, and it's a good way to talk about what things really are in a very simple way, in a non-complex way. Iron Island would be the exact opposite. Iron Island, you can't trust anybody. You have robbers and bandits and the kind of people who would enslave you directly. Silver Island is the in-between, and Silver Island would be more like the world we live in, at least the world of Western democracies. There's maybe some people who are more on the gold side or the iron side or in between, all different kinds of shades. So we'll call that Silver Island. For this particular broadcast, we're going to limit ourselves to Gold Island so we can kind of clearly talk about some things. And then from there, as time goes on, I'll bring in examples from Iron Island and Silver Island. So let's talk about Iron Island or Gold Island, where we have 100 people trying to survive. So we're going back in time on Gold Island. On Gold Island, survival each day means every person has to acquire things for themselves. And there are 3 things, let's say, that they have to acquire. They have to get 1 fish, 1 coconut, and 2 gallons of drinkable water. Every person, every day, has to have at minimum 1 fish, 1 coconut, 2 gallons of drinkable water just to survive. Okay, and it's not easy getting these. It actually takes a lot of work. With effort, on average, they can probably catch 1 fish every 4 hours. They wade into the ocean and maybe they have a stick with a spear on the end and they try to jab a fish. Getting a coconut can be problematic. You got 100 people, may take some time to travel to find a coconut tree where there's a ripe coconut. Getting up the tree, finding it, getting it down, on average takes 2 hours. There's a freshwater spring in the middle of the island, but it takes a couple hours to get there, and then you have to fill up some things and bring them back. So on average, it takes about 4 hours to bring back 2 gallons of drinkable water. People who live primarily on the beach near the ocean because that's where the fish are, where most of the coconut trees are. So they have to travel for the water. So for each person on average, it takes about 10 hours of work every day to acquire one fish, one coconut, and 2 gallons of drinkable water. And maybe there's a little shared labor in a family, a husband and wife, for example. Maybe the husband will spend all day catching a couple fish. The wife will be able to go and climb a tree and get a couple coconuts and then do the trek to bring back 4 gallons of drinkable water. However the division of labor happens, it can be done that way. But it's still, there's a net effect of each has to work a full day and be exhausted at the end of the day. So there's no sense of wealth creation at this point. People are in a mode of survival. So how does wealth get created? Well, let's say one of the couples on the islands is Tor and Sophia. So one day, Tor has an idea. The idea that he can move beyond mere survival. And this is an important point, that wealth can happen only when you're able to move beyond mere survival. You have to get out of that survival mode and be able to do something creative so you can do more than just merely survive every day. So Tor's idea is to create a fishing pole. He has this idea of a hook and this ability. He wants to experiment, in other words. But to do this, he has to sacrifice. He has to take some time off from fishing to actually develop his pole. So working with his wife, he sets some time aside. Perhaps he does work a longer day working on the fishing pole, but he may go further. And it's like, okay, rather than using the traditional means of getting one fish every 4 hours by spearing it, I'm going to use this idea of a fishing pole and experiment. So over time, he experiments and he realizes, hey, on average, he can catch maybe 4 or 5 fish a day. In other words, in the space of 4 hours, he can actually catch enough fish for his wife and him to live for a couple days. This is really great because what it does is, by creating something or inventing something that allows him to get more in the process, it saves time, it saves labor. He's able to now take more time off and improve his idea. And a day could even come where he develops up to the point he can catch 10 fish a day on average. This is wealth. The idea that through sacrifice, hard work, and the creative imagination, Tor is able to acquire 10 fish a day. He can put salt on some of them, and this gives him leisure time. Now he's beginning to move beyond mere survival. He has time to contemplate other things. And his wife, who is also brilliant, who is also an entrepreneur of sorts, has an idea as well. She has the idea of a slingshot, and that she doesn't have to climb trees anymore. If she can spot a ripe coconut, she can take a slingshot, hit it with a rock, and knock it down. So this is something she takes time off, she sacrifices, puts it together, and then after a while, she's able to knock down a few coconuts in the space of a couple hours, whereas before, on average, she could only get one. And over time, with improving her technique and improving the type of slingshot she's using and the kind of ways she can kind of figure out which ones are really ripe, which are the best ones to go after, she can get up to 10 coconuts a day as well. And this is wealth. Between the two of them, they've been able to create wealth. She still has to travel for the water, or he does, but they've actually increased the amount of time they have, so they're not in survival mode. They can rest more, they can have a child and take care of that child. They can save for the future so that they can take days off. So wealth is a result of applying the creative imagination and doing it in a way where you may have to work hard. You may have to, if you have an idea, you have to actually realize the idea. And sometimes the first time you realize it, it's not the best way of doing it. So work is involved, testing, experimenting, trying different things out. And you have to sacrifice your present comfort for a future goal, with the idea that it'll pay off in the end, but there may be a lot of investing your time and energy in working hard, applying your creative imagination to pull it off. Now, the kind of wealth we're talking about is a very specific kind. There's more than one kind, but this is labor-saving wealth. The idea that you create tools, appliances, techniques that save time and work. Think of washing machines, for example. There used to be a day where if you're cleaning clothes, you had to wet them and beat them on a rock and do all kinds of weird things. It was a very backbreaking activity. The washing machine or anything that helped speed up that process saved labor. And that was a form of wealth. The tool allowed you to have spare time to do other things. And this is very valuable to people. And this is why tools, appliances, and techniques that save time and work have value. They are wealth. On the next episode, we'll talk about building wealth, because there's other ways of building wealth. And in the meantime, go to markandrealexander.com for more information and try out my book, Money and Wealth, What You Should Have Learned as a Teen Book 2, on Amazon.com.